Hello. So a while ago, I talked about different ways to remove stress. And I talked about the one way to do so, which was acceptance. So today I'd like to talk about the other way, which I'm sure a bunch of you have been waiting for, which is change. So let me give you an example. Last night here, it snowed. We have a beautiful covering of snow outside. That is a situation I can't really do much about. But the snow on my driveway, I can decide to accept that situation and not shovel, or change that situation and clean off my driveway. So that's what I decided to do this morning, and I'm still a little bit sore from doing that, but I have accepted that that was the decision I made and what I ended up doing, and I'm happy with the result. So I have changed the situation, and I am now comfortable with that. Now, the change I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to do two posts on this because there's sort of two types of change. And one is sort of short-term change and long-term change. And the short-term change I'll talk about first. And the key to any change is really persistence. If you don't like the situation and you don't want to accept it, then you need to change it. But it may be a long haul to do so, and it may require a lot of energy. So you need to be committed to doing it and committed to seeing it through to the end. Let me tell you a little bit of a story. So a few years ago now, this was quite some time ago, my car was stolen from the parking lot of the apartment building I lived in at that point in time. That was not particularly a nice thing, but sort of managed to accept initially that it had been stolen. We had a second car at the time, so at least we could get around. What aggravated the situation was about a month later, we got a call from a wrecking yard saying that our car had been there for a month and now we had to pay to get our car back. So my car is stolen and now I have to pay to get it back. And I was not happy, to say the least. I was furious. And we went and talked to the wreckers and said that, yeah, the car had been impounded there for a month, but apparently no one had told us. We ended up having to sell the car to pay what we owed the wreckers. It was a write-off anyway. So, I mean, fixing it was going to be a significant cost. So that was a situation that I was not going to accept. I wanted to know what had happened, and I wanted to get reimbursed for this money that I had to pay because my car was stolen, which just seemed ridiculous to me. So I called the police and asked what had happened. They said that they'd found the car and reported it and had told us that they'd found it. I knew that wasn't the case. And so I began a long, drawn out exchange with the police to try and figure out what happened, essentially. It took 2 months of calling the police and escalating the situation to, higher and higher up the chain. And finally, I got them to admit that, yes, maybe the officer who found the car had not reported it. Essentially, that it wasn't my fault that this whole thing had happened. And once we got to that point, I said, that's great. I'm glad, that we've come to this realization. And I asked them to reimburse the money that I'd had to pay, again, for my stolen car. They said that they would love to do that, but it's not likely to happen given once it was handed over to accountants and lawyers, they're even sort of harder to get things out of than, anybody else. So I wasn't going to give up. I kept calling and kept talking to whoever I needed to talk to. And another 2 months later, I finally had a check in my hand for the amount that we were owed. So that was 5 months after my car was stolen, 4 months after we found out what had happened to it, that I finally managed to rectify this whole situation, that I got things changed. And that's short-term change. It can take months. So you need to stick with it. You need to be willing to do whatever it takes to fix that situation or that project. And if you want it to change, then you can, but you have to put in that time and effort. And I'm sorry, but there really isn't a quick fix. There isn't an easy way to do this. So again, if you want some help with that, maybe that's something you can talk to a coach about. Or if you've got that drive and persistence, just change it on your own. My next post, as I mentioned, will be on how to change things within ourselves, things that are a bit more longer term, because those things can take even longer to get the change where we want. Until then, remember to dream big, laugh lots, and create.